Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. Let's get started. Leaders representing protesting farmers announced suspension of their Delhi march for the day, saying some farmers were injured as police fired tear gas shells. A farmer leader said they would meet to decide future strategy. Turkey confirmed that its foreign minister would be meeting ministers from Russia and Iran in Qatar on Saturday for talks on the civil war in Syria. The talks would take place on the sidelines of the Doha Forum. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's wife, Bushra Bibi, resurfaces after Islamabad protests meets the family of workers who was killed during the stir. Hundreds of protesters hold a candlelight vigil near the South Korean parliament in Seoul ahead of the impeachment vote on Saturday.
오늘 끝내야 합니다. 지금 당장 감사합니다. 구호 한번 외쳐보겠습니다.
UK's Guardian Media Group announces sale of the world's oldest Sunday newspaper, The Observer, to online news company Tortoise Media. The sale is to go ahead despite strikes by staffers.
पाके उसनू डैमेज भी किया जा रहा है।
Right now, the U.S. Coast Guard is searching for as many as 5 people after a fishing boat capsized near Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. We've learned that Washington-based icebreaker, the Healy, is now joining those search efforts. The crew of that 50-foot boat, called the Windwalker, sent a Mayday call that it was overturning. It was just after midnight yesterday. The vessel encountered rough waters off of Point Couverton, that's southwest of Juneau. Take a look. This is a photo of the boat. 5 people are believed to be missing. However, officials haven't yet confirmed the number. The Coast Guard says high winds and heavy snow made the search challenging.
Well, right now we're following breaking news happening near Pittsburgh. 64-year-old woman who fell into a sinkhole has been found dead after 4 days of searching. Just minutes ago, county officials confirmed finding the remains of Elizabeth Pollard. Pollard was last seen Monday when she was searching for a missing cat. The sinkhole where she was found was spotted shortly after she was deemed missing. Now, yesterday, Pennsylvania State Police said crews used an excavator to reach the spot in the mine where they believe Pollard would be found. Today, drills were brought in, and from the ground, crews drilled into the ceiling of the mine shaft.
Our next story is about a mysterious disease that has sent alarm bells ringing in Congo. What do we know about the disease? How many people have been affected? How far has it spread? What are the authorities saying? Let's break it down for you. The mysterious disease is a flu-like disease that has reportedly sickened hundreds of people and killed at least 79 since late October. According to the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in fact, almost 200 of the 376 with the flu-like illness are younger than 5 years. The health minister has said that they are on maximum alert, saying, quote unquote, we consider this to be a level of epidemic that we need to monitor, quote unquote. According to the Director General of the National Public Health Institute, the disease emerged at a time of increased influenza circulation and the culprit is likely to be airborne. Patient specimens are being analyzed at a national lab. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, health officials continue to monitor an outbreak of what's being called the bleeding eye virus or Marburg virus. The outbreak has triggered concern about a potential spread outside the country. Now, why exactly is it called the bleeding eye disease? One of the typical symptoms of the disease is bleeding of the eyes, and hence it is termed as the bleeding eye disease. What exactly is the Marburg disease? It's a rare but severe viral hemorrhagic fever that is highly deadly. In fact, the U.S. State Department issued a travel advisory on 22nd November recommending that travelers exercise increased caution in Rwanda due to the outbreak. The advisory stated that travelers may be subject to additional health screenings when entering and exiting Rwanda. As of November 29, the country had reported 66 cases of the virus and 15 deaths. Most of the infected people have been healthcare workers. According to the CDC, approximately 75% of the patients with Marburg have recovered.
Singapore is going extinct. That was Tesla CEO Elon Musk's big tweet on Thursday. The comment was a response to a post about Singapore's baby crisis. And it's not just Singapore. Musk thinks a lot of countries will go extinct. He has not named them. But earlier this week, South Korea made headlines for the same reasons. On being the first country to disappear from Earth, the headlines itself may sound alarming, but the reason is very simple. The dropping fertility rate across the globe, the ideal fertility rate required to sustain a population is 2.1. In some countries, it has dropped below 1, and that has sparked concerns. So is Singapore really facing extinction? Which other countries may go the same way? Our next report tells you.
In every corner of the world, the signs are becoming harder to ignore. Once bustling towns grow eerily quiet. Schools shut their gates for good. Entire villages vanish. Humanity, for centuries, has thrived on the foundation of growth and reproduction. But now, the numbers tell a chilling story. Birth rates are plummeting. Populations are aging. And the survival of nations hangs in the balance. A stark warning came from Elon Musk. He tweeted, "Singapore and other countries are going extinct." The reason? Falling fertility rates. Singapore's fertility rate has been declining for some time now. But in 2023, it fell to a historic low of 0.97. This refers to the number of children a woman is expected to have in her lifetime, and it has left the city-state alarmed. So Singapore did what all governments do. It tried to throw money at the problem. But even that did not help. Singapore's baby crisis is because of a couple of reasons. The cost of living crisis, the expenses of raising a baby, and the difficulties managing work and family commitment. Just offering parental leaves or cash incentives doesn't make them go away, and it's the same situation in many countries across the globe. Like South Korea, earlier this week, it made headlines on how it could be the first country to disappear by 2100. The reason again was a population crisis. South Korea already has the lowest birth rate in the world. In 2023, it fell by another 8% to 0.72. If the trend continues, in 50 years, nearly half the population will be older than 65. Japan, too, has a similar trajectory. It was once the world's 11th most populated country. But its population is expected to halve before the end of the century. Japan now sells more adult diapers than baby diapers. Then, there is China. Until recently, it was the world's most populous nation, accounting for a sixth of the global population. But Beijing too is dealing with falling birth rates, and this isn't just a developed country problem. In 2023, Brazil showed the slowest population growth on record. So this is truly a global problem. In 1950, the average woman had 5 children. Today, that number is just over 2, and in many developed nations, it's far below that. For a population to hold steady, the number should be 2.1. So, what's driving this global phenomenon? The reasons are complex and intertwined. Rising urbanization, the high cost of living, and shifting cultural norms all play a role. Many young people are delaying or foregoing parenthood altogether. That is due to financial instability and career priorities. Women's empowerment too plays a role. Access to education allows more women to choose if and when to have children, and this is an economic catastrophe. Fewer people mean fewer workers, fewer consumers, fewer taxpayers. National economies are built on demographic momentum, and that momentum is grinding to a halt. The cost of an aging population will be astronomical. Healthcare systems will buckle, pension funds will collapse, economic growth will stagnate. Governments are throwing money at the problem. Tax breaks, incentives, more leaves. But money cannot create babies. Governments need to understand, it isn't just about creating children, it's about creating a world where people feel they can. Or else, civilization as we know it, could run out of people.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump has named David Perdue as U.S. ambassador to China. Let's get more on this story from our chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Engels. So, Steve, we're just really trying to wrap our heads around this appointment. What do we know about David Perdue so far?
Yeah, first of all, I think it was a foregone conclusion that Nicholas Burns was going to be on his way out, even though it hadn't been mentioned. Of course, he was Biden's longtime ambassador in Beijing. But David Perdue is a former senator from Georgia. He is actually the cousin of the former two-time governor of Georgia, Sonny Perdue, a wealthy former CEO. He worked at Reebok, Pillowtex, Dollar General Stores. He won his first Senate seat, I believe, in 2014, so 10 years ago, at the young age of 64. So he was a late bloomer to politics, and he was a staunch supporter of Donald Trump in the first term. Actually, he was kind of one of Donald Trump's go-to guys in the Senate during his first term. So perhaps this, as oftentimes these very high-profile diplomatic postings are rewards for loyalty, perhaps that's what this is. Again, he was also the chairman of the Sea Power subcommittee in the Senate. He has been an advocate of smaller government spending, as many Republicans under Trump have been. But he also, given the fact that Georgia has a big population of military personnel, he would like to see more outlays to the military at a time of heightened geopolitical and national security risks. And again, the Sea Power subcommittee, there's a big naval base in the coast of Georgia as well. So again, we're going to have to see how this all plays out. He was also the chairman of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs subcommittee in the Senate as well.
Interesting. Annabelle just flagged this. I think it's a piece that he himself wrote, and it's not too long ago, actually, September, which is
September of this year.
About 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And let me just read you an excerpt from this, Steve. Sure. Through all my activity in China, and just a part of this, right? So context is key. Through all my activity in China and the region, one thing has become painfully clear. The CCP firmly believes its rightful destiny is to reclaim its historical position as a hegemon of the world order and to convert the world to Marxism. Suffice to say, China hawk.
Yeah, I would think so. And also, of course, given he's a military hawk as well. So, yes. I mean, Nicholas Burns was no pushover either. I mean, he talked a lot about these kind of things and the threats with the South China Sea and in Taiwan. And again, has been a harsh critic of China's no limits partnership with Russia at a time of the Ukraine war, obviously. So I don't think Beijing's going to get an easy dove coming in as the ambassador. It's an extremely difficult job, obviously, to be the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to China at this time of increased entity list and export controls and retaliatory export bans in key metals to the United States by China. There's so much pressure in this job. We'll have to see. I mean, he's a veteran of the Senate. He has diplomatic chops, but again, no easy job.
Yeah, the title of that piece from Senator David Perdue himself, Washington Examiner, China's New War, America's freedom depends on confronting the threats. Stephen Engel, thank you so much.
Syrian rebels gain ground. Russia is standing firm and putting the West and its allies on notice, stating that it will not hesitate in unleashing its nuclear might to safeguard its strategic interests in Ukraine and Syria. You see, for Moscow, losing Assad would be a geopolitical disaster. Syria is not merely an ally, it's a linchpin of Russian influence in West Asia and North Africa. The next big question in Syria is, when will Tehran intervene? You see, just like Russia, Syria is vital for Iran as well. As per reports, through Syria, Iran maintains a direct land corridor to its proxies in Iraq, Lebanon, and beyond. How far will Moscow and Tehran go to preserve their interests in Syria? And will Russia's threats of nuclear force extend beyond Ukraine and into the heart of West Asia?
More than 3,000 people are taking shelter in various locations on the Colombian border with Venezuela. The Colombian authorities say that the group fled from recent confrontations between Bolivarian National Guard and an armed group. The displacement started when dozens crossed the Arauca River that separates both countries. They took shelter at a municipality in northern Colombia. Just in the days, the displaced people rose from thousands, with majority being Venezuelans.
Estamos en el cuarto día de recepción de desplazados por la violencia del vecino país. Hoy cuantificamos a las 10 de la mañana 3.961 personas que se encuentran en 15 puestos, en 15 lugares donde están en este momento recibiendo atención.
Now, among those were also Colombian migrants. People on the Colombian side of the border heard machine gun fires and explosions. The Venezuelan Defense Ministry claims that its army fought an armed group. However, it did not disclose any of the details of this group. The president of Venezuela's National Assembly, Joe Rodriguez, has also accused the U.S. and Colombia of having links to groups that are attacking a border region of the OPEC nation. The accusation comes after the Colombian government reported thousands of Venezuelans fleeing their homes. Venezuela has said that its military is fighting Colombian armed groups in rural areas and has its population support. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan Attorney General Tariq William Saab has opened a fresh investigation on former Venezuelan lawmaker, opposition leader Juan Guaido. He has accused Guaido of seizing $7 billion from Venezuela.
Queremos informar en alcance a todo lo que hemos venido realizando contra uno de los sujetos más despreciables de la sociedad venezolana. Despreciable por toda su inédita trayectoria como jefe de una banda criminal de carácter transnacional. Efectivamente, me estoy refiriendo a la serie de acciones delictivas, criminales que atentan contra la República, que ha venido realizando este sujeto, Juan Guaidó, con sus secuaces, en donde Venezuela, vean ustedes, posee más de $7.000 millones secuestrados en bancos extranjeros.
This comes a day after President Nicolas Maduro accused the seizure of $7 billion into foreign banks. The latest accusation comes against Juan Guaido, mounts up to a long list of charges that he already faces.
Pero Venezuela tiene
we believe it was deliberate. We believe it has been targeted. What we don't know is why, and we'll get to the why.
This is a tragic day for the Australian Jewish community and Melbourne Jewish community and the Adus community as well. We have been warning about the risk of this for the last year since 7 October. Don't yet know what the outcome of the police investigation will be, but clearly it was a deliberate and hate-filled attack. It's not much of a stretch to assume that it is an anti-Semitic attack. It's not likely to be a coincidence but it was a synagogue on a Friday, as Naomi said, just before Shabbat, the Jewish holy day. So there were unfortunately injuries this morning. You need to understand that this is a very active and busy synagogue. It's a place of prayer and it's a place of study. And there were people here at 4:15 in the morning when the attack occurred who were engaging in quiet, prayerful study, as is their right and the right of every Australian.
What we do know, a witness who was attending morning prayers has entered the synagogue and upon entering has seen two individuals who were wearing masks, for want of a better description. They appeared to be spreading an accelerant of some type inside the premises. This individual has left. Police were subsequently called to the premises, where the premises has been engulfed and has suffered extensive damage. Local area commander, our first and foremost priority is to identify those individuals that are responsible for this. We believe it was deliberate. We believe it has been targeted. What we don't know is why, and we'll get to the why. I'm here in the capacity as the officer in charge of the Arson Explosive Squad to give that reassurance to the community that we will do everything we can to bring these individuals before the courts. Patrols will be increased. I want the public to be reassured that we'll do our utmost. Again, I'm here for that reassurance. That is, we are taking this seriously. We will give the local community what they need, and that is we want them to be able to go about their business and pray safely. I mean, this is Australia. We want individuals to be able to do that.
That this was a shocking incident should be unequivocally condemned. There's no place in Australia for an outrage such as this. To attack a place of worship is an attack on Australian values. To attack a synagogue is an act of anti-Semitism, is attacking the right that all Australians should have to practice their faith in peace and security. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise. We call it out wherever we see it. We've appointed and I spoke with Gillian Siegel, our anti-Semitism envoy, this morning as well. We've taken action of providing increased support and security funding for Jewish organisations.
If you can watch development. Recently, Mr. Trump has not yet reached his White House to his because many guests may not know that our White House is near us, where the government works, good decisions are made there, and different decisions are made there in Washington. So, he has already stated that if the BRIC states use or do not use the dollar, then he will introduce 100% duty against all these states. And this perhaps is one such threat to the state in general. Americans have had a nightmare about specific banks. We will banks punish companies in this way, in order to state in the forehead that states will be punished and all products will be taxed 100%. One for a newly elected president. We all know that Americans are very sensitive to this topic because America's strength is in the dollar. Of course, because investing money in dollars, if there is no dollar with its positions, will only fail. The American economy, with its huge debt, with the fact that, as it were, the dollar brings huge profits to banks and so on. Is that what you think of the new president's move? Won't what you said finally undermine confidence in the United States, in its policies, in its financial system? Will find the BRICS countries and other states even faster to flee from the dollar and get rid of this system?
First of all, I agree with you about the use of the dollar as the world currency. The United States has a lot of unearned money. According to our experts, somewhere in the last 10 years, they received approximately $10 trillion just like that from heaven for the facts of use. The dollar as the world's reserve currency, well, it's on bets, on placements in their banks there and so on. 10 trillion is decent. Very much it means that they consume more than they produce. This is a very important thing. That is, in fact, the United States, at the expense of the dollar, continues to exploit other economies of the world in its favor. Few people think about it, but it is a fact. And on that part, I agree with you. It's 1 now 2. You said that. The son of President-elect Trump has threatened that those who do not use the dollar, he will impose sanctions against them there and increase tariffs. As far as I know, he didn't say that. I understand that everything that has to do with the United States causes a certain reaction in us. As far as I could see, however, I had no time to particularly look at what was happening somewhere beyond the hill, but nevertheless, I paid attention to it. He said that if someone forbids the use of the dollar and restricts it, he will react accordingly. It's not the same thing. It is one thing to prohibit the use of the dollar and another thing to another. Don't use it, you know? These are different things completely, that's why. 2 to 3. After all, the newly elected president has not been in the same position for 4 years. During this time, changes have occurred in the economy, in the world, and in the American economy. His political opponents have done a lot to undermine the dollar as the world reserve currency. And first of all, they did it with their own hands, using the dollar as an instrument of political and maybe even armed struggle, in order to cause damage to other countries which are still in power in the Soviet Union, but exist as their enemy. We have never considered them. They suddenly decided that we adversaries began to impose restrictions. And taking into account the fact that the share of SA in the world economy is decreasing, and therefore the influence of the dollar on world economic processes is also decreasing, processes associated with the use of other instruments naturally occur. For example, on Bitcoin, who can ban it completely? No one AA. The use of other electronic means of settlement, who can ban anyone? Because these are new technologies, and whatever happens with the dollar, these tools will evolve one way or another, because everyone will strive to. Reducing costs and enhancing reliability is an unavoidable process that must be navigated. Li Deten has nothing to do with it at all, but if there is a further continuation. Reducing the use of the dollar in the world and with their own hands. They will, of course, undermine the basis of their economic power. That's pretty obvious. I completely agree with you here. Ultimately, here we are at last. We never declined the dollar. Did we reject it? No. We refused its usage. Yet we refused it, and they acknowledge they struggled and confronted the inherent issues of the dollar itself. Now it's crucial to contemplate our next steps. All of this stems from a confidence built through exclusion. This is equally unacceptable in the economic realm. Understanding the world's ongoing processes is vital, and it is upon this understanding that we must structure our policies, even internationally. Observe the natural occurrences in various nations. Countries, even unwavering allies of the United States, are decreasing their gold and foreign exchange reserves in dollars and euros. It's noteworthy that this reduction has spanned the last decade. The reduction was approximately 13%. This is a significant amount. This phenomenon transpires naturally. And no one, he can't reverse these processes, particularly using sanctions and coercive approaches that are detrimental to the economy and those who initially accept it, creating widespread and long-term consequences.
Thank you very much for a new conversation with him. Our regiment will tell the project so he didn't wave.
A person who has advice and recommendations is activated.
I didn't need it, okay.